I just feel like it's the final frontier, right? We have a female of a Class 1 railroad, and hopefully it broke the last ceiling, right? That now we can get to just relax and just continue to build up women in the industry, because diverse perspectives are just going to make it better.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or AREMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about AREMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who AREMA is and how AREMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Blesser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts AREMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with AREMA?
ARE Corporation is a proud supporter of AREMA and Platform Chats. If you are looking to take your railway structures career to the next level, or simply start it down the right track, please visit us at arecorp.com. Please see our brand new job postings on our careers page or on our LinkedIn page.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to AREMA's Platform Chats. I'm your host, Walt Blesser. If you've been following us, I think we're actually in Season 2, Episode 3. Every time I say that, I feel like, again, we're in some weird Netflix special where there's some guy or gal on a couch just binge listening to these season by season. But that was AREMA's choice to go with seasons and episodes to make us feel even fancier than maybe we are. Every time I do these, we oftentimes talk about where we are in the world of railway industry podcasts. But you know what? I'm going to keep you guessing. I'm skipping that this month because I forgot to look before I started this podcast. But I'm just going to guess we're in roughly the same place we were last time. So we'll keep the interest heavy, and we'll cover that the next month. So, hey, it is officially March, and that is Women's History Month. And a couple days ago was International Women's Day. So unless you live under a rock, you probably saw all kinds of posts on LinkedIn. You saw posts on Instagram. You saw people congratulating each other and basically highlighting women in their industry. So I thought, man, there's no better time to highlight women in the railway industry, because that's what we're doing here on the Platform Chats podcast. So today I hand selected from a laundry list of names of women that I know in the industry and came up with two individuals that both work for railroad owners. These are not consultants. One of them works for the Union Pacific Railroad. One of them works for Amtrak, and they were actually selected on purpose because one comes from a publicly held, publicly traded company with a stock ticker in the Dow Jones. And then the other one comes from a privately owned, publicly funded from the government in amongst other places, I would assume, Amtrak. So both probably have very different experiences, not only in what it is they're shipping, what it is they're moving on the rails, but just their day-to-day life is very different from a railway perspective. So without further ado, I have Krista Keene from Amtrak. She's a senior manager at Amtrak, and she has been there a number of years. I've actually known her a number of years. And I also have Cassie Gouger, who is at Union Pacific Railroad, currently serving as a senior director of design. As usual, we will have them both take an opportunity here and dig deep into their resume and their history of how in the world did they end up in the seats that they're sitting in now. And then we're going to talk a little bit about their AREMA involvement and what they feel is why they feel it's necessary not only to be a member, but also to how has it benefited them as in their careers. And then we're just going to open it up. We're going to talk a little bit about ladies and women in the industry. And I think this is going to be a fun one. So, Krista, I'm going to let you kick it off. Why don't you just tell us just a little bit about how in the world how'd you get on this podcast? Go ahead.
How I got involved in the railroad industry, to me, it's not very interesting, but I guess it might be to some others. Growing up, my dad was an electrician, and he actually worked for Amtrak. He worked in Amtrak's mechanical department. So he was back in the day. Amtrak had a system of riders, is what they called them, and they actually rode the trains, the fancy Metro liner service that we had back in the day, because that was very important that it got to New York on time. And they used to put techs on the trains just in case they had any issues with the pantographs or any of the systems on board. So he was one of those. So I grew up riding the train. I didn't necessarily think about working at Amtrak, but I did like it as a way to travel. And then I went to college, and because my dad was an electrician, I tried electrical engineering. So I took the intro to EE class, 101, and decided that was not what I wanted to do. It was not the most interesting class in the world. And I was actually the only female in that class. And then the college had a series of dinners in the engineering school, and I found civil engineering. And I was like, hey, that sounds cool. Roads, bridges, things I understand and like. So we had a professor who was very involved in TRB. And he used to somehow get us sponsored to go and rooming and go to the conference. And I actually had a chance to meet Jolene Molatoris back when she was the head of the FRA. So a long time ago. And I saw her at a networking event down there. And she actually said to me, the railroad is good for girls. So stick with it, stick with the industry. So I said, okay, that seemed like good advice. She was very nice. So then when I graduated from college, I went to work in consulting, and I worked as a consultant to CSX doing their outside party projects. Then I came to work at Amtrak and worked in system production. So all the large scale capital projects, undercutter, TLS, bridge jobs, that sort of thing in engineering. Then I left and went back into consulting and spent most of my time consulting two railroads, working on the DM&E project out in South Dakota, working a lot for Amtrak New Jersey Transit with Portal Bridge, other stuff like that. And then I even moved up to Albany and worked on New York State high-speed rail for 2 years. Then I ended up moving back to the area outside Philadelphia to be closer to my family, and took a job back at Amtrak. And so I've been back, and this year is actually my 10th or 11th year in the railroad, technically as a railroad employee.
Oh, fantastic. So you must have grown up, if you grew up riding trains, I'm guessing you did not grow up in West Texas. I'm guessing you must have grown up in the Northeast. Is that right?
I did. I grew up right outside of Philadelphia in New Jersey.
Okay, because I will tell you that out west, throwing around the term pantograph might get a couple people scratching their heads. We don't see a lot of highly electrified lines out here. I guess you do now, Cassie, don't you? From Denver Airport to Union Station, we get to see those. And what a great transition! I bet you never thought pantograph would be the transition to Cassie Gouger at Union Pacific Railroad. Take it away.
All right. I'm going to be dating myself here. So when I started university, I had no thought of being in the railroad industry. I went to an engineering school and was asked to participate in a co-op program. And I was lucky enough to do that in Chicago at the time when all of the highway funding was drying up. And I looked over and I was like, well, that group is busy. And I went over and I said, can I work in your group? Because I don't want to just sit around. And that was my initial taste of the railroad on the engineering perspective back in the late 80s. Okay, so that's when I first started my love of the railroad industry.
And when you say the late 80s, just so we're clear, Ed Sparks started in the late 1880s, but you're talking
1980s, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Cassie.
Century difference there.
Yep.
So I finished college, then I stayed on the consultant track, and then about 11 years ago, I was like, I'm halfway through my career. I would really like to work for a Class 1 railroad. So it just so happens I was at an AREMA conference. No, we're not going to AREMA yet, but with the contact there was like, hey, is it too late for me to work for a Class 1 railroad? So it wasn't, and I have been here for 11 years, and I love it. The railroad industry is fast paced. You get to see your projects done right after you design them, and they want you to design them as fast as you possibly can. And, it's just exciting. I have been on the highway side, and that is a much slower pace industry. And so the railroad industry really aligns with my short attention span.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then you're in private industry, and you speak of the highways, which is technically, I guess, the public funding. And speaking of which, I guess would be Amtrak. So I guess, Cassie, would you say you see the same high-paced speed of design and construction and bridge replacements that Cassie sees over there at UP?
I would say not quite. Things have a tendency to get designed when funds are available and then, but put on the shelf as ready. So I would say when money becomes available, we try to make the most of it and design those projects, get them as further along as we can, identify early action items if there's additional funds available to get the construction going. We are, of course, I'm sure like everyone, highly anticipating the infrastructure money that is soon to be available. Even though that would it will affect us internally with capital projects, but it'll also affect us with our external partners, as I'm sure UP will experience with all of the DOTs and bridge replacements and everything they're looking to do. So
I am so glad you brought that up. I know the last time that we talked about public funding of infrastructure, I was in the consulting space, and it was something around, I don't remember what year it was, but I kept hearing the term shovel ready. And what meant exactly what you just said, there was that quote unquote perfect set of plans sitting on the shelf for XYZ bridge replacement or whatever. You guys could go out and just spend that money and show the public that you're making improvements. That infrastructure bill, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but I can totally see how that affects Amtrak. And I think most of our listeners understand that. Cassie, how does that affect you? And if you don't completely understand, that's totally fine. I'm guessing you do. But what would you kind of the yin to the yang of what Krista just said?
So one thing I should have gone into is what I actually do for Union Pacific. So I head up the design group. So any new capacity, whether it's capacity of the main line or commercial facilities bringing on business that requires new capacity, comes through our group. So we also have public group that works with the public agencies on projects. And so we're very aligned with what kind of funding is out there to try to align on public-private partnerships that our group will either help build, if it's for UP capacity, as a mitigation measure to a public project, or for instance, a commuter line wants to come on and therefore we have to add more capacity. So yeah, we are, as a company, very aligned with what kind of funding is available and what kind of projects that we're working with the public agencies to move forward to get some of that funding.
Excellent. So I'm hearing this is good news all around, really, for both our Amtraks and our Class 1s and short lines, etc. This is man, I got to tell you, my brain's just spinning. I have so many questions for the two of you, and you guys have had really excellent careers in the industry, and I've been aware of both of you for quite some time. So this is fun for me, and I'm going to do my absolute best to stay at a level that's not overly excited like a Chihuahua. I'm going to go more like maybe Labrador. That might not be a good example either. So that was interesting what I just said. Let's move on. AREMA involvement. That's why we're here. And I think it would be great if we could do the same thing we just did. If Krista could talk a little bit about her involvement. When did you find out about AREMA? When did you join? Were you forced by your boss? Or did you seek it out? I've heard all kinds of great stories about AREMA. And what is your involvement today?
So, I'm trying to remember the first time I heard of AREMA. I think it was when I really started working on railroad projects. And of course, many of the railroads, even though we have our own design standards, we're also saying reference AREMA, reference AREMA. So I believe one day I said to someone, "Hey, what is this AREMA?" And basically they were like, "It's a set of manuals." So they pointed me in the direction of the gray binders in the office because of course we didn't have like the server copy or a digital copy then. They were like, "It's over there, that's AREMA." And I'm like, okay. So I go to look through them, and then I heard other people say stuff about AREMA, and I was like, well, they just published the manuals, right? And they're like, oh no, they have a conference and this and that. So I kind of researched going to it. I think the first year I went, I paid for myself to go because I was so interested in it. And, we've already maxed out like how many people in the office could go. And I remember I went and sat in a couple committees to see which one I wanted to be on. And I very quickly became involved in Committee 17. At the time, when I started the involvement, Frank Miller was heavily involved in Committee 17. So, and we worked together. So I somehow, within a couple of months, I ended up being secretary of the committee. It's one of those like, hey, you showed up, you're new here. Like,
So
and
what is, and I'm sorry, 17 is what?
high speed passenger systems.
Okay. High speed passenger rail system.
Sorry. Yes. I feel
No
like
problem.
that's like code lingo. High speed
So you
passenger systems.
joined and immediately became secretary.
Yes. And then I ended up being secretary for a couple years because someone had left and I was finishing out his term. And then I did like another 3 years. And then I moved up to vice chair and then chair of the committee, which are typically 3-year terms. And then recently I just moved on to director of the P&T Passenger and Transit Functional Group.
Oh, fantastic. Is that new this year, right? As of fall?
Yes, new this year.
Cool. That is outstanding. So you really were somewhat interested on your own.
Yes.
To kind of figure out and then you just jumped right in.
Yes. I mean, the best way to figure out what's going on is being involved in the committee. I feel obviously by being secretary and stuff, I've learned a lot. I've learned all about rules of order, things that I don't necessarily know, but I think about them when I'm in a meeting at work. Like, yeah. I think we should vote on that. I think we should put that in the parking lot.
Yeah. I think we need a motion.
Yeah.
A second. And we need discussion. And I'd like to spend
sometimes I think our Teams meetings would go better with them.
I understand. However, I just left a Committee 7 meeting where we spent an hour talking about should and shall. And I said, gentlemen, this is why people don't want to join AREMA. So let's knock that stuff off. Cassie, try to follow that one.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Okay, so I was lucky in my career when I started co-oping in Chicago, and that's where all the annual conferences used to be. And being a student member, I was able to go for free. And I was literally the only female. And it was very frightening at the late 80s and early 90s. And I was just like, it was very overwhelming. So I stayed a student member. I didn't become a permanent member until 20 years ago, because this is my 20th anniversary of being an AREMA member. And then it took a couple more years to get more involved on the committee level. And I started attending Committee 24, which is education and training, which is where we develop a bunch of different seminars and webinars. We do not have a chapter in the manual. So we focus on trying to get student chapters, student involvement, all of that outside goals of AREMA. And so when I got involved on the leadership, I was on maternity leave and voted in as secretary. So that is how my tenure started. And I followed the same path, right? I was secretary, vice chair, then chair. I took a year off, and then I'm a year and a half in on my board of director for the engineering services functional group.
Okay. Fair enough. So there was a little hiatus there. So you said you went to the, I'm guessing it was at the Palmer House or something back in the
Yes, it
day.
was.
Okay. And then you took, did it scare you so much that you took 10 years off?
Well, and I was so busy because I was working for consulting firms and traveling all around that I uh, evidently thought I didn't have the time for it, or I was a little scared off. So it was probably a combination of the two that was like, I don't know if that's for me. I was a little bit intimidated for sure.
Fair enough. Because I contrast that with the fact that you, I know, have twin children and work in a class one railroad environment, and now you have leadership positions. So that's quite the yin and the yang there.
Yeah.
And you're a bit of an AREMA OG. I have to say, Cassie, I really am happy you brought up the fact that you went in there and you were the only female. In preparing for this podcast, I was just reading a little bit about women in the railway industry, and it's not that long ago that they were not even, I wouldn't quite say allowed, but it took the 1960s and 70s legislation to basically end sex discrimination and have equal pay to men in the railway industry. I read a 2015 article in Progressive Railroading about the fact that as of 2015, only 5% of S&P 500 companies had female CEOs, and zero of the seven class ones had female CEOs. And even the workforce, Union Pacific only had 6% of their workforce was female. CSX 7%, Amtrak 23%. Now that was 7 years ago. I think a lot of things have changed. What I'd love to hear from both of you, your reactions to some of those facts. And we keep starting with Krista, and I see it's going to be Cassie's going to go first this time.
Yeah. So our numbers have actually gone down for women overall. We have 5.4% women. We have a goal to get up to 11% by 2030. But yeah, our 5.3% is our percent, and we have a higher percent in the management, but in the field, we're laying flat about 2.4%. So if you think of that, of the 32,000 employees, we only have 5.3% women. So it's a
Wow.
big goal of our company to get that up to 11% in the next 9 years.
And what is UP doing about that? Are they recruiting differently, or are they doing some? Are they trying to do something different?
Yeah. So how we interview, we're actually going out to craft technical schools, really trying to focus in on letting people know that the railroad is an industry that you can come to. Overall, we're trying to have a better work-life balance as we can in the field. That's pretty difficult. We're, 24/7, 365 organization. So they're really taking a step back and looking at that. And in the hiring process, we have to have a diverse panel of interviewers, and we really strive to have a diverse panel of resumes to work through. But we will hire the best person. So we're still, pushing to try to influence that number.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's only so much you can do in that sense, but I think a lot of people forget that at a class one railroad and any of these railroads, not all the jobs are like yours, sitting in an office. There's so many are in the field, welding rail, moving around ties and ballast and working on bridges, and then
Yeah.
there's all the locomotive and the mechanical shops, right, and everything else to deal with that. Krista, how does those numbers hit you?
Um, so I think it reminds me a lot of back in the day being in engineering school. I think we still, even, and as you just mentioned, when we see the women in the railroad industry and even at work ourselves, when you see women in a high position, like all of our executives that are women, it is our general counsel, it's human resources, and it's our CFO. So to me, it's none of the it's not mechanical, it's not the transportation department, it's not the engineering department. So I think as well as we do, we're still, it still all seems to be in one way, as Cassie mentioned. I think when you look at the numbers of where the women are, we have a lot of station operations, we have a lot of customer service relations positions based on the nature of our business, conductors on the trains, the LSAs on the trains. You don't see them in the M&W forces. There's still not as the presence in engineering that I think there should be, or that I think folks in engineering would say there should be. So I think it's still, we're working on it. Diversity and inclusion, they're consistently always working on it. They've put a big push into that in the last 2 years. But you have to have the applicants to hire them. So I think a lot of that starts back, in colleges and even at home. I would say, my parents had very much of you can do whatever you want philosophy, sky's the limit. So I think that's really the message you always want to get to people. Like, there's no specific industry or jobs that are, for any one person.
Yeah, and I think when I go back to those percentages, right? Cassie updated mine to 5.4%. Yours was at 23. I do think people west of the Mississippi specifically forget, about the Northeast Corridor. They forget about all of the stations from DC to Boston and everywhere in between. There's a lot of opportunities. There's just a different front, I guess is the way I would put it, versus if I look at Cassie sitting in Omaha and running coal and intermodal and stuff like that versus human beings. So there's different jobs available, I guess is where I was going with that. And historically, you just named, human resources and CFOs and frankly attorneys, right, are classically versus M&W. You just see a different profile. So how do we fix it? I mean, obviously the two of you aren't going to fix that today. I have yet to fix anything in my life, according to my wife. So how do we change the industry? How do we make by 2030 that 5.4% go to 11%, like Cassie said? Is it, Cassie, assuming you probably do the same thing, going out to universities, etc. What do you tell that, twinkle in the eye 21-year-old, 22-year-old getting ready to graduate from U of University of Nebraska? What do you tell them about Union Pacific? Because I guarantee you, if she grew up in the area, she's heard about it.
Right. And, it kind of combines, what we're doing at the railroad also with what Committee 24 is doing with the student chapters. And we're also trying to even go K through 12 to get people interested in the railroad industry. And, I go and talk to my local schools about railroading. And I love seeing the twinkle in the eye of these young girls so that they will join the industry. I mean, I've had some uncomfortable situations in my career, but where companies are going now, it's hard to even imagine that it's a thing anymore, right? I think we've just come so far. And so I really don't even think about it anymore, which is an interesting kind of progression in my career, because I've been really lucky to have, which I could say, male allies, right? That's the new buzzword, being allies. And that's kind of what we're pushing at the company, is having male allies, right? We had an interesting statistic of 84% want to be allies, but 50% of those don't know what that means, right? So it's education, really, so that women don't even have to think about it, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal. But to answer your question, is I would, if they were interested in civil engineering, and I would just talk to them about, what there is to offer at the railroad. I mean, it's an awesome job. It's super fun. It's fast paced. And it's a lifelong journey. I've been here 11 years and they're my family, right? It's more than a job to me. I can't imagine not doing this. And you would think that they would see, the twinkle in my eye about, what I've been able to experience here at the railroad.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I know you're a little further down the path of parenthood with I think your children are 12, if I remember right. I
Yes.
have one that's 2.5 and one that is a half. And, my hope is that, when they're in their 20s, 20 years from now, that, when they look at an individual, whether they're purple, black, brown, white, women, male, they don't think about, they just, it's a person. That's what you just described is that transformation that you've seen in your career, and I hopefully that next generation of people, that's where they'll be. We won't even have to talk about it. That's some pretty powerful stuff you said. And Krista, I'm going to say good luck following it, but please do.
I like to think that I've taken a very proactive approach when it comes to it. I've tried to be involved as much as I can in any programs with high school students or below to discuss railroading whenever I'm asked to come talk or do anything in any place. I always do. I like to see it as just getting the information about the industry out in general before focusing on who and what and where. Just like, this is a good career, it's still a great place to work. There's still a lot of longevity, for some of us, retiring at 60 can be an attractive option as well. Here at Amtrak, we have the benefit of travel. You can travel the whole country. So that's also a nice thing. I actually also take a lot of pride in where I work. I mean, despite what some people's viewpoint it might be, I can take a plane and I can get there faster. I take a lot of pride in where I work because I can see it every day. The train runs literally, as Cassie said, 24/7, 365. It's a service. We're there. We have people working every day. Everybody's dedicated. People are working holidays. People are working nights. I think it takes a special type of person to want to be in an industry like that. And so that's what I try to impart upon people. But also, if the 365 lifestyle isn't for you, there are plenty of jobs here within Amtrak where that's not a requirement, right? There are many things you can do in here. And I've worked with some people on that too. I've worked with some mentoring some folks that were in college, and they went into like government affairs, like community relations type field, which is very important to the railroad, to us. I know it's important to the class ones as well. Community relations is always a big field. So it's very important to us. So I think that's like, I try not to get saddled into just engineering because that's what I know. And just saying there's so many opportunities here, regardless of what your interest is.
Yeah, I think in the last podcast we did, that was covered pretty heavily, and I completely agree with that. It's just such a wide array of things that you can do within one company, right? And you can kind of get to taste a little bit of something. If you don't like it, you can move on. I know, oh gosh, several years ago, I worked on an Amtrak project, and a gentleman named Jim Richter was telling me about the management trainee programs that you have there. Is that something similar where people get to try a little something different for a certain period of time? Krista, I don't.
Yes. So we have, they have them in a couple different groups, and I know, I think the class ones even have them a little more regimented and scheduled. I think ours are a little. Our transportation one is pretty, it's like almost a defined career path. Like, you come into the trainee program, but they have you work, I think every 6 months you're changing into a different part of operations in transportation. And then depending upon that, you go into be like a station master or into train operations, different things. They have them in engineering as well. Skylar, who was on the podcast the other week, he was what we call a MAP, which is a management associate program. Then they end up calling them MAPs. So I think it's been very successful for us. Also, as Cassie mentioned, like, she was a co-op. We've tried to develop a lot of relationships with the nearby colleges. We have Drexel, Temple. We have a lot here right around 30th Street, not to mention in DC, Boston, and our other locations. But right here where I am, they've tried to make a lot closer relationship with the nearby colleges, do more of the career fairs, just to put the name out, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. There's obviously a focus. There's obviously a push. We're seeing change. I mean, as we look to the future, and close this podcast out, Katie Farmer, we haven't even talked about the fact that she's a female CEO of a Class 1 railroad, right? Of BNSF. So, like, when you guys saw that hit the news wire, how'd that make you feel? And frankly, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe CN just appointed a female CEO of their railroad. Did that even hit your guys' radar, or were you just like, yeah, that's interesting?
I would say it hit my radar. Of course, I think you always have a little bit of why can't it be us?
Sure.
But no, I think I watch closely, Railway Age, Progressive Railroad, all the industry publications out there that you get. I watch closely when there are management changes to see, who's moving up and I actually like to read what their career path was before, how did they get to that level? Like, did they come in from the outside? Did they work their way up? Were they in consulting? So no, I saw it when Katie Farmer, I can't say I saw CN yet, but
I might be wrong about that, just so we're clear.
But I definitely saw when Katie Farmer was CEO. I always make mental note of those things. And we've actually been pretty fortunate because when I met Jolene Molitoris and she was the head of the FRA, then past her were a couple more gentlemen. And then recently there's been more females back at the head of the FRA again. So I keep an eye on all those things. But to Cassie's point earlier, I feel like I shouldn't have to, right? It shouldn't be weird. It shouldn't be news. It's like, all right, some other person I don't know is CEO now. Like,
yeah, that's actually probably the best take. Cassie, anything you want to pile on there?
No, I just feel like it's the final frontier, right? We have a female of a Class 1 railroad, and hopefully it broke the last ceiling, right? That now we can get to just relax and just continue to build up women in the industry, because diverse perspectives are just going to make it better.
That is clear and concise and a fantastic soundbite. I could not agree with you more. How about AREMA? Let's finish there. Like, how I can tell you guys, my first meeting was in 2005 in the Palmer House Hilton, and it was not diverse at all. So I guess I fit right in. So, I don't think that's a good thing, frankly. I remember thinking that as a young buck, and now I'm 42, and I don't know when I'm 62 and I go to AREMA, what do you guys think that's going to look like?
Gosh, I think it's just going to be more and more diverse. I feel it has to, right, to be representative of the industry, right? I think everybody's pushing, rightfully so, to get those diverse perspectives. And I think being on Committee 24, there has a higher percentage of women than probably the others. And I can see just over the last 20 years the big difference. And I think one of the benefits of joining as a female is you do build those allies, right? So me being a definite minority going and making friends, and now I feel like they're family members all across the railroad industry, is just changing perspectives that they'll be an ally for whoever is able to do the work, no matter what they look like. So I just feel that whatever anybody can do to further that, just so that it becomes a non-issue.
So I'll share some of my AREMA-isms. My first conference that I went to in 2006, I was, headed steadfast to a committee meeting, and I had someone stop me and ask me if I was looking for the spouse program.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, no, and I wasn't married. So I'm like, I don't even know what he's asking me. So like, I'm so confused. I figured it out later. So, and to me, I mean, 2006, that's still kind of late for that. But I think to Cassie's point and to your point, Walt, because if you started there in 2005, like it was still kind of an anomaly. You know, my boss was like, okay, meet me down at the, general session and just look for me. I was like, I have an idea. Like, why don't you look for me? Because I'll probably stand out more. Like, it'll be much easier for you to find me. But I think that's why it's also been very important for me to stay involved with AREMA, because I do want to be out there and be a face for younger engineers coming up and younger members in general, that, AREMA is diverse, that we are putting that forward, that we do have, there's still not that many when we have our board of directors meetings, directors and VPs for functional groups. There's not enough as far as I'm concerned. We haven't had a female president of AREMA yet. It's a big deal for our country when we have a female vice president. So it's still in 2022. So I think those are the things like AREMA can follow along with.
Yeah, I hear you. That's like saying, hey, honey, I'm heading to the Broncos game. You might see me on TV. I'll be the guy in the orange jersey in the stadium.
Yeah.
Just look real hard.
Yeah.
I'll be cheering.
I'll be the cheesehead in Green Bay. Is that what they are?
That's right. Maybe you should look for me.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was good.
Wow. And honestly, not even from a standpoint of being a woman, but also age. I feel like the organization is also getting younger.
I agree. I do think we are seeing, people talk a lot about the great resignation this fall, etc. And I feel like the great retirement is happening too. I mean, I feel like if you are in your 40s right now, you the people that were your mentors, there are a lot of mine that are gone, and they left almost at the same time. And there's gaps, and those guys weren't, writing everything down in emails and sending them out on their way out. There was between the old ears. So it'll be interesting. So Denver this fall is the AREMA National Conference, and I guess we'll just have to see how things turn out. But I have a good feeling it'll be a stark contrast to 2006. That's my hope.
And definitely to when Cassie first went.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And
that made her take a 10-year hiatus.
Perhaps this is not for me.
I'll come back when they catch up to me.
I'll give them a decade. So okay, I'm back, and I joined in 2002, and life's good. So, I would like to thank both of you, not only for being on the podcast, but being excellent representatives of the industry and being fantastic representatives of AREMA. Both of you have given countless hours to the committees that both of you work on, and both of you I know are on the board now. And I can tell you right now, I guarantee someone who's listening to this has considered you a mentor or has considered you someone that they look up to, and you're very likely providing that twinkle in the eye for someone in the industry. So keep it up. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing both of you in Denver. And I say this on every podcast. I appreciate AREMA coming to Denver for me so that I don't get in trouble with parenting duties in September. So,
are you our tour guide?
Absolutely. Whatever you want. Obviously, there's certain substances that this industry needs to stay away from. And we will not be breaking any FRA rules as far as that's concerned.
And I'm just going to put it out there that Krista should be the first president of AREMA.
Oh.
Female president. There we go. It's out there, Krista.
Thanks, Cassie.
It is out there. On the this folks, this is why you listen to Platform. This kind of hot ticket doesn't come across a podcast in the rail industry every day. And with that, I'm not touching that one. Thank you both.
With your 10 million listeners.
That's right.
Wait, you have to say, give us a 5-star review on whatever. That's what my podcasts always say at the end.
Yes. I'm not a beggar. We just expect that if we do a good job, that'll come. Thank you guys both. and we will see you in Denver.
Yes.
Thanks, Walt.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.